The summer of 1984 was supposed to be a straightforward road trip, with a father and his teenage daughter traveling cross-country in search of a final adventure before she headed for college. They filled up the tank, packed light, and vanished somewhere between the Arizona border and the desolate roadways of Nevada. Their family waited for weeks, then months. The vehicle never turned up again. The phones did not ring, no people, no hints, only quiet, and a void in the hearts of all those who cared for them. After years of fruitless searches and rumors, the case was quietly put on hold and left to collect dust in a cold case repository. However, 16 years later, a tow truck driver discovered something shivering at the rear of a deserted junkyard. It was concealed under stacked scrap metal, rusted and worn with time, and under a tarp. The riddle that plagued 2 generations will be unraveled by what he discovered. Why was the car there, so far away from their last sighting? More significantly, what did it contain? Hold on tight, for this story will take a surprising turn. It's a story of long-kept secrets, a broken family, and a revelation that would surprise even the most experienced investigators. Stay tuned, and keep watching till the very end. The way this long-forgotten enigma was ultimately solved will astound you. Initial disappearance and long-term impact. A father and his young daughter were to go on a straightforward weekend road trip to create memories on Texas's open highways. However, Jim Halbrook and his 8-year-old daughter Lucia disappeared on a spring morning in 1984. No last call, no goodbye, just quiet. Margaret Halbrook, Lucia's mother and Jim's wife, was left behind and realized right once that something was seriously up. Doris, Lucia's grandma, was by her side, holding on to hope as the years passed. Their entire world was upended by the disappearance. By tenaciously advocating for answers and maintaining Jim and Lucia's identities through yearly paid missing person alerts, Margaret became the spokesperson for the missing and maintained a personal vigil that remained unwavering throughout time. A strange finding rekindled the cold case in 2000. At a sprawling salvage yard in San Marcos, Texas, junkyard owner Dean Lahm stumbled upon something that gave him chills. A heavily crushed red 1979 Cadillac DeVille, half buried in a stack of scrap. There was something strange about it. When the police arrived, they only had to look at the car to know what was going on. It was Jim Halbrook's vehicle, as evidenced by the faded paint, a noticeable ding on the passenger side door, and the aftermarket chrome accents. The ghost of that journey had abruptly resurfaced in a heap of twisted metal after 16 years of silence. Here comes the tough, no-nonsense chief technician at the junkyard, Reed Carroway. He initially stated that the red Cadillac had arrived only a week prior, driven in by a man whose face he could hardly recall. No name, no documentation, no inquiries were made. Many people were taken aback by that. Why wasn't the vehicle listed in the intake logs of the junkyard? Why was a car that had been missing for more than 10 years permitted without any paperwork? And when probed for specifics, why did Reed come across as so reticent? As the inquiry progressed, Reed found himself under a microscope. Jim and Lucia's story was no longer merely a tragic family tragedy. It might have been a link in a deeper, more extensive series of events. Did Reed have a secret? Or was he just an inadvertent player in a mystery that had been simmering for 16 years? The Halbrook family was rocked by the finding. The Cadillac was more than simply a vehicle to Margaret. It was a coffin-shaped key to a history she had been denied for far too long. What was the outcome of that road trip? Would the truth finally be revealed at this time? The terrifying question that now confronted investigators was whether Jim and Lucia had been singled out. Or was there someone close to them who was more aware than they ever disclosed? Expert confirms the nightmare. Margaret's breath caught when she discovered a tiny blue purse hidden beneath a pile of oily auto manuals while searching through Reed's office's dusty drawers for her mother's asthma inhaler. This was no ordinary accessory. This was Lucia's purse, an uncommon early 1980s Mattel Barbie collectible. that same one she had cherished the weekend she and her father disappeared. The shape, stitching, and faded pink lining were all clearly identifiable, even though the soft plastic had faded with time. It wasn't just a toy, it included a time capsule from the day her young daughter vanished. Until an expert verified that the bag was real, a 1983 limited edition Mattel Barbie item available only at a few department stores, Margaret didn't want to accept it. What was so chilling about it? As Margaret recalled, Lucia's initials were faintly scrawled on the inner flap of the item, which had been out of use for decades and was extremely difficult to locate intact. This was no accident. Someone had made a special effort to conceal this evidence. Oddly, someone has purposefully scraped out the small manufacturer label inside the bag. Someone had made an effort to remove all traces of date information and branding. Red flags were raised because of the careless cover-up. If you don't want a child's toy to be linked to a crime scene, why conceal its origins? Margaret and Doris then focused once more on Reed, the proprietor of the Junkyard, who had been just a little too helpful from the beginning. It was a casual talk when Reed made a mistake. He recalled information that had never been made public and wasn't in the missing persons report, such as Lucia's mole beneath her left eye and specifics about Jim Halbrook's favorite baseball team. Margaret stopped. Fear pricked at her flesh. Reed wasn't a helpless spectator. Somehow, he was connected to their disappearance. However, how strong was the bond? Margaret's automobile inexplicably broke down on a back road close to the Junkyard just as the suspense reached its climax. Reed and Jason, his associate, just happened to be in the area and offered assistance. Margaret and Doris hesitantly accepted the trip, feeling helpless and cornered. However, the atmosphere changed as soon as the doors locked behind them. The kidnapping happened quickly. The women were thrown into the back of an old truck, gagged and restrained. Reed yelled about getting the handbag back, his cool manner breaking into passion. His desperation was evident in his obsession with the blue Barbie purse rather than money, silence, or a way out. There was more in that handbag than nostalgia. There was something dangerous about it. Already troubled by decades of unresolved issues concerning Jim and young Lucia, Margaret and Doris are forcibly transported to a dilapidated remote farmhouse in the middle of rural Texas. Their kidnapper, Charlie Carnes, is a cold-blooded crook with a lengthy history of secrets and an insane manipulator. Carnes doesn't behave in isolation. The property is guarded by his cronies and is reinforced with rusty chains, makeshift security, and a gloomy quiet. The interior is in terrible shape, with padlocked doors, blood-stained walls, and haunting relics of Lucia's stolen youth. A pale young woman, quiet, aloof, and hardly human in her manner, rests in the corner of a gloomy room. This Samantha is actually Lucia Halbrook, who was abducted at the age of 8 and given a new identity by her captors. A silent savior, Micah Carraway's secret call. Carnes and his troops are unaware that an unlikely ally is observing. The home is discovered by Micah Carraway, the estranged and troubled father of Dean and Reed, who is trying to find out where his son is. Micah dares to call 911 in secret after understanding the unsettling reality and seeing Margaret and Doris in danger. He slips away to make the call, risking his life. His message is unambiguous. They have been searching for a girl for more than 16 years, and 2 women are being held captive. Please provide assistance. I don't have time to explain. Please. While sirens blare across the fields, red and blue lights rip through the night. The splintered farmhouse doors are broken down by SWAT forces. In a frenzied haze, they discover Samantha cowering behind a crate and Margaret protecting Doris. Charlie Carnes tries to escape, but is apprehended after being tackled to the ground. While one of his accomplices disappears into the nearby woods, the other 2 are arrested. At last, Lucia is free, but she remains silent. Not even her name is familiar to her. After years of brainwashing and incarceration, her mentality is still stuck in survival mode. The truth comes to light in the days that follow, and it's more sinister than anyone could have predicted. The night Jim Halbrook vanished, he was murdered. He was shot in cold blood by Charlie Carnes as he was allegedly stopped to assist with a car problem. Carnes then abducted little Lucia with the intention of destroying her past and creating a new identity from the ground up. He gaslighted her into thinking her former life was a dream, changed her name to Samantha, and repeatedly mistreated her over the years. Raised to think of Carnes as a hero rather than a murderer, Reed, Carnes's son, became a pawn in the cover-up. With Jason's assistance, Reed crushed and buried Jim's red Cadillac in the junkyard, putting an end to the past. They feigned stupidity, threatened witnesses, and tampered with the evidence as the Halbrook women conducted a fruitless search. Lucia is alive, malnourished, and physically unhurt, according to her body. Her mind, however, tells her otherwise. She flinches at abrupt movements, hardly talks, and looks out windows as though she's still trapped in that farmhouse. She has no memory of her mother, she has no memory of being Lucia. But as Doris hums a lullaby from Lucia's early years, something inside of her stirs. A spark of recognition, a breach in the darkness. When Margaret learns that her daughter is still alive but that she would need to struggle daily to bring her back, she falls down. The floodgates of law open. Charlie Carnes is charged with several offences, including child abuse, wrongful confinement, homicide, and kidnapping. Both Jason and Reed are charged with tampering with evidence and obstructing justice. Investigators find bone fragments close to an old well while searching Carnes's property for Jim's remains. In an effort to provide ultimate closure, forensic investigators get to work. Margaret and Doris, meantime, pledge to assist Lucia in discovering her true self. Using images, music, and stories from childhood, therapy starts out gently. Instead of being imposed, Lucia's true name is subtly reintroduced. One day, the young woman's lips quiver as Margaret shows her a family portrait. "Lucia," she utters in a scarcely discernible whisper. A start. The story doesn't end here. It marks the beginning of a protracted journey that winds through rediscovery, resiliency, and trauma. The miracle is a bittersweet one for Margaret and Doris. For Lucia, it's the opportunity to recover a life that was taken from her, and justice might finally be in Jim Halbrook's grasp. In addition to operating a junkyard, Reed Carroway was a well-liked member of the community, a stepfather figure to many, and a man who knew how to exercise authority covertly. But there was a predator hiding behind that exterior. He concealed horrible acts by abusing his position of trust. In order to keep his secrets hidden, Reed used charm and strategic control to manipulate those around him. With the use of terror and silence, he was burying the facts rather than merely hiding victims. The disturbing reality of abuse is that it frequently passes as normal, and Reed did his job perfectly until the evidence started to pull his web apart. Interfering with the purse, smashing the vehicle, transferring victims across locations. A disordered mind did not act in this way. They were the steps of a person who meticulously planned every action with unsettling accuracy. Reed and his colleagues were methodical rather than impetuous. To cover up their misdeeds, they relied on silence, rust, and time. However, the truth has a way of eking its way back to the surface, just like everything else that has been buried. Although Lucia's body was released upon her eventual rescue, her mind remained imprisoned. Her captors had nicknamed her Samantha. She remained silent. She didn't answer. It appeared that her soul had closed itself off for safety. Psychologists refer to this coping strategy used by people who have experienced chronic trauma as dissociation. It can take years or even decades to heal. But she recognized a face in the hospital where sunlight streamed through the windows. Mom. The spark came back. Real, albeit small. Trauma accomplishes just that. It silences. But affection. You may hear the murmurs of love. Margaret and Doris were warriors, not just bereaved family members. They battled through every restless night and every fruitless lead. They also served as Lucia's lifeline when they were able to reunite with her. The rescue wasn't the end of their involvement. It was just getting started. Family is survival for trauma survivors, not simply solace. It's like trying to track down a ghost when it comes to a 1984 disappearance. No cell phones, no GPS data, no security cameras. Important witnesses pass away, memories deteriorate, and evidence deteriorates. Before a stroke of good fortune rekindled the case, law enforcement faced enormous obstacles. Community members frequently possess the answers to long-forgotten riddles, as demonstrated by Dean's identification of the smashed Cadillac during a news program. Yes, it was a lucky break, but it also demonstrated the effectiveness of public awareness. Loyalty is not always the result of family relationships. Micah Karowe, the father of the man who kidnapped Lucia, opted for bravery over violence. He discreetly helped Margaret and Doris while being plagued by shame, making the anonymous 911 call that led to the rescue. Micah's deed serves as a reminder that good things can emerge from the most unexpected sources. He made the decision to be a light in a dark family. This case teaches us an eternal lesson. Hope is the most obstinate survivor of all. It is full of rusted clues, damaged lives, and buried truths. Everything mattered, from a blue handbag to a lost Cadillac, from a courageous grandfather to a quiet girl. Every brave deed and every minute of perseverance advanced justice. As it often does, the truth eventually emerged, slowly, brutally, but victorious. A 16-year-old mystery was finally revealed in the most eerie way. Who didn't want them discovered, and what actually transpired during that road trip? Share your theories with us in the comments section. Is this a component of something larger? Remember to like, subscribe, and keep checking back for more terrifying discoveries.